How you doing, everybody? Welcome to the channel. Thank you for tuning in. I appreciate you. If you've never been here before, please check out plenty of the videos I have. There are many up there. Everybody else, welcome back. For those of you that have never joined me, I served 17 years straight in the New York State prison system. Um, I have been home for 12 years. And what we're going to talk about today is the recidivism rate, how we can stop recidivism inside of the prison system. And for those of you that do not know what recidivism is, that means returning to prison after you're released. Men and women that get released from prison and then go back in again on new charges. And that would be a, excuse me, that would be a wonderful thing to stop. If we can seize that from transpiring, obviously we improve the lives of society, we improve the lives of victims, we improve the lives of the person that continues to live a destructive life. And so, what can we do to ease that recidivism? There are many things that we can do. First, let me say that during my 17 years in prison, I would watch men get released and then come back again. They would get released from prison, come back on new charges again. I saw some men get released 3 times during my 17 years, go in and out, in and out. And it was very sad to see. It was sad for a few reasons. For one, I had hoped that I would receive the opportunity to leave, because my goal was to never go back. And here these guys were getting the opportunity to make it in society and then coming back again. So whose fault is that they were coming back over and over again? Obviously, it's the fault of the individual that is committing the crime. But what can we do to stop them from committing the crime? I think one of the main things the prison system can do itself. See, there's different things that can be done in society. But when we talk about inside of the prison system, I would think one of the main things that, well, there's two of them. Two of the main things that the Department of Corrections needs to focus on. One is a therapeutic environment. See, New York State itself, every state operates a little differently, but New York State itself concentrates on incarceration instead of rehabilitation. There is no true rehabilitation inside of the New York prison system. On paper, it looks like there's a great deal of rehabilitation, and that's because the state wants the money from the federal government for certain programs, right? But that's a different story. And then they get the money for those programs and they only create a shell of a program, right? And then they pocket a lot of the money because the love of money is the root of all evil. But back to the point at hand is they need to focus on a more therapeutic environment. To give you an example of how bad it is, I served 17 years for, unfortunately, taking a man's life in a fight. I was 24 years old. I was in a fight with another 24-year-old man. I ended up ending his life in that fight. And it was a pretty bad and brutal situation. And I went into prison. I was charged with murder. I ended up pleading guilty to the charge of manslaughter in the first degree. I was sentenced to 12 and a half to 25 years. And during my time in prison, there was no therapy. They never asked me the question how I felt when I took someone's life. There is not me, let me state for the record, not me, but there are many people that took someone's life and they wouldn't think twice about taking someone's life again. There were many people that took someone's life and it was just an occurrence for them. They didn't feel bad. They didn't even have a conscience about it. Not everyone. But don't you think it would be important to get into the minds of those individuals psychologically and find out if they're ready for release? No one ever asked me during my 17 years how I felt when I took someone's life. There's people that enjoy it. Let me state for the record, I did not. But there are some people that do. We have to admit that, right? And no one ever asked me if I would do it again. Let me state for the record that I wouldn't do it again. But it was an important question. I should have sat down with therapists. So therapy should be given to the men in prison on a weekly basis. I never saw a therapist in 17 years. 17 years in prison, in an unhealthy, abnormal, twisted, dark, cold, violent, hard environment with a criminal history. There was no therapy. Now you can write a therapist and ask to speak to a therapist, and you'll go down there and see a state worker who feels like you're bothering him, like you're taking up his time, right? And so the men need therapy. They should participate in therapy on a weekly basis. Every prisoner, it should be mandatory that once a week they meet with a one-on-one with a therapist, and during other days of the week, they should have group therapy, real group therapy. Like, so the Department of Corrections will turn around and say, well, we have drug programs, and we have therapeutic programs, and we have violence programs, and I'm here to tell you that they're nonsense. They're not real. Most of the programs are run by another prisoner because they don't want to hire the civilian to run the program. And if they do hire the civilian to run the program, he's nowhere to be found. And he pays a prisoner $7 a week to run the program. And a prisoner who's in the same situation, the same circumstances himself, is running this prison program. Excuse me. Pardon me for that. So a lot of therapy needs to be brought into the prison. The second thing that needs to come into the prison is some real serious vocational program. They have things like radio and television repair. They have things like custodial maintenance. They have things, and when you go into these programs, again, they are a shell of a program. They're not going to teach you any skills to survive in today's world. They are ancient and archaic, and they give you the very basics just to say that they're giving you some type of vocational. The state is receiving tens of millions of dollars for these programs, if not hundreds of millions. There's a $2.3 billion budget for the New York State prison system. That's what it be. $2.3 billion. And what they have in there is a disaster. So they need some real vocational training. So what could they do? They could teach the men something like serious computer repair. That can benefit people in today's world. Some serious website design, right? Some programs that can really benefit them when they step out. How to use AI, artificial intelligence, right? How to design business websites, how to start your own business, classes on banking, classes on investing, right? This is besides the educational part. I'm talking about the vocational part needs to be structured. They need to wipe out what they have in there and really start preparing men to enter the outside world, to become productive members of society. And they don't do that. All right. So we talked about the therapeutic needs, and we talked a little bit about the vocational needs. Now we have to talk about educational needs, right? 70% of the men that go into prison don't even have a high school diploma. So most prisons do make it mandatory that if you do not have a high school diploma, you have to go for your GED. And you have to go for your GED for at least one mod. And what that means is they have an AM module, AM program, a PM program, a PM module. So they'll give you school in the morning and maybe vocational in the afternoon. School vocational in the morning, school in the afternoon, and then nothing in the evening, so the prisoner can go to the recreational yard. So what I say they need to do is they need to make GED mandatory for two mods. If someone doesn't have a GED, they have to make it mandatory that he goes to school in the morning and the afternoon, and he doesn't take any other programs besides participating in the therapeutic programs until he obtains his GED. Education is a big one because what happens is if they're going into prison, right, undereducated, they don't have a high school diploma. If you release them without the GED, they are in a worse situation than when they went in because now they're going back into society not only undereducated but also as a convicted felon. Now they're a convicted felon without a diploma, without finishing school. So the situation has actually become worse instead of better. And in New York State, they give you $40 in a bus ticket and they kick your ass out the door, right? So they need to focus on the education. They need to focus on the therapy, right? They need to focus on a better vocational. These are simplistic things that can be fixed very easily. If I was in there, if I was in charge, I would be able to fix these things very simple. You just need to change the structure. right? Then I would say one of the harsher things, right, is that the prison officers need to get a different type of training. This is a big one. You see, the officers, when they're taught how to deal with situations, they are taught in the correctional officers academy. They are taught self defense. They are taught restraining techniques. They are taught how to use a baton. They are taught how to, they're not really taught how to de escalate situations in a verbal manner. They need to be taught better verbal skills, right? They need to be taught better de escalation skills. Okay. And what the academy is responsible for this, it's the academy that really needs to change their approach on corrections in itself. Okay. And it should be mandatory that correctional officers take some type of social work, some type of human interaction classes inside of college, right? They are talking about lowering the age for the Department of Corrections from 21 to 18. So an 18-year-old could become a correctional officer. This will be a disaster, a disaster. You need to keep the age 21, but make it mandatory that they have better social skills, that they go and get some type of 2 year degree, even an associate's degree in psychology. Right. And then the approach of the correctional officer is not that I'm overseeing a bunch of animals that I have to beat up and abuse, but I'm dealing with people that need help. That should be their approach. And are you going to be able to help everyone? Of course not. There are men in prison that are reluctant to change. There are men in prison that don't want to change. There are men in prison, some of them that don't have the mental capacity to change. That is true. But you weed those individuals out and you focus on the main goal of trying to make a difference, like they do in some other countries, like Norway. It's a little easier to do there. I know a lot of people compare that country because their population is very small. Okay. We have about 1 million prisoners in the United States of America, right? Where Norway could have 10,000, you know? But the approach should be the same. The approach in Norway, they give the prisoners real rooms and they wear normal clothes and they prepare them for outside work and they send them to do jobs and they have real vocational stuff and they treat them like human beings and their recidivism rate is extremely low, right? So when we talk about changing vocational, giving therapy, focusing on education, having the officers with a different type of approach and training, all this starts at the top. All this starts at the state level of politicians because they're the ones that set the rules and set the laws inside of the Department of Corrections. So it would have to start with the academy, right? The way that the Correctional Officers Academy takes an approach to dealing with men that are incarcerated. That's one big thing. The second thing is the actual structure of the prison system, right? When you, correctional officers should be, I know this is easy to say, but they should be focusing on putting their arms around a prisoner and saying, listen, you are somebody. You can do something with your life. You have the ability to walk out of here and never be put in here again. And the choice is yours, right? We're going to show you how to make those choices. We're going to show you how to make those decisions. We're going to show you who to turn to in society to make your dream become reality, right? So let's start focusing on what you want to step out of prison and do with your life. What would you like to do for work? To sustain yourself, to stand on your own 2 feet, right? Let's create some organizations that you can get involved in because there's not enough of them. And guards, officers need to put their arms around prisoners and say, listen, I care about you. I'm not here to beat you with a nightstick. I'm not here to do this. I'm here because I think it's unfortunate that you're here and it's sad that you're here, right? And many people are in prison for different reasons, right? I understand that, right? You have from all walks of life. You have people that came from a wealthy background, from people that came from the projects, but most of it has to do with drugs. I meant to bring that up too. If 90% of the people are in prison because of drugs and alcohol, this is true. That's what statistics say, right? They may not have been under the influence of drugs, but 90% of the population of prison, and what's more powerful than this, either possess drugs, and that's why they're there, they were selling drugs, they were under the influence of drugs, they did a robbery while they were under the influence of drugs, or they did a robbery to get money to get drugs, or they had spousal abuse while they were under the influence of drugs or drunk, or they were driving drunk, or they killed someone while they were high or drunk, just like me. When I got into the fight with the guy, I was a complete addict. I was using angel dust. If I wasn't under the influence of drugs, I wouldn't have committed my crime. So, yes, I'm ultimately responsible because I took the drugs. But drugs aren't the problem. People turn to drugs. Drugs aren't the problem. A person experiences a problem in his life and then he turns to drugs to rectify that problem. He turns to drugs to numb himself, to skirt around the problem, to avoid the problem, because he doesn't know how to deal with the situation that's inside of him. Maybe he turns to drugs because he feels like he's nobody, or because he was abused, or because he can't find a job, or because he has no self-esteem. People turn to drugs for all different types of reasons. So this is why the social work, the therapeutic community, is needed in the prison system. These are important things. There are other things that can change. There are many other things that can change, but I just wanted to give you a little idea of how we could begin to lower the recidivism rate, right? Prisoners, guards, and prisoners need to form a different type of relationship. They are living with each other 24 hours a day. And so let me say, there are guys, again, that you won't change. There are bad people in prison. There is a percentage of them that are just bad, that they never worked a day in their life. They live their lives to take advantage of every person they meet. They're robbers, stealers, carjackers, drug dealers. They blame everything on everyone else. They take no personal responsibility. But this is where the therapy comes in. This is where you try and get inside of their head and inside of their heart and find out what the issues are, why they believe that, why they. Now, the problem is that the powers that be don't think that the men in prison are worth it. They probably think it takes too much time, it takes too much money. The people in prison are looked at as the dredges of society, the bottom of the barrel. But that approach, that outlook needs to change as well. Politicians need to change that outlook, because there are a percentage of good men in there, good human beings. And the ones that think all screwed up and messed up, like blaming everyone else and living their lives to take advantage of society, I don't say that most of them are bad people. I'm saying they haven't reached the point yet that I luckily reached and realized that I put myself there. So, guys, don't put yourself there, because right now the system doesn't look like it's changing. It's not really focused on changing. I don't hear any talk of it really changing. So, don't subject yourself to the system. Set goals, focus on your goals, go after them with determination. I'm dealing with I don't have all the answers. I'm dealing with a tremendous amount in my life right now. It's very, very difficult for me to make this video today. I am on the verge of being homeless. I have been staying in my van for the past 3 or 4 days. I was just permitted to come back into my man cave and make this video because I'm on the outs with my wife, right? So, and I have no employment. So I'm facing homelessness and joblessness right now. I've been out for 2 weeks. I've been out for a year and a half looking for a job, right? But I've been pounding the pavement. I've been on different programs on the computer. I'm calling every single person I know, trying to find a job so I can get enough money to get an apartment, right? Because I can't get an apartment unless I have a job. All I need is a little studio apartment. That's all I need. I don't need much in my life. I lived in a cell for 17 years. But right now I can't find a job because of my history, right? Because I'm in my 50s. I have a manslaughter rap sheet, right? I have some health issues. I can't just go do construction. I'm in my 50s. I got a hip replacement. I got diabetes. I may look all right. But I have some issues, man. besides the PTSD of 17 years incarcerated, right? So I'm really, really stressed out right now. I'm really in a scared position. And the reason I'm sharing that with you is because I want you to avoid, youngsters, I want you to avoid ending up in this position like me in your 50s, where you're facing homelessness. You have no job, nobody will hire you. And my thoughts are about just giving up. That's where my thoughts have been all week. So I'm sharing some real personal information with you. If you make the bad choices and decisions, this is what happens. You suffer. I'm suffering. I've been home from prison for 12 years and it's haunting me. So while you're younger, focus on doing something proper with your life and go after it like you've gone after nothing before. If there is a wall in front of you, go over it. If you can't go over it, go under it, go around it. If the door is closed, take it off the fucking hinges and go right through it, run through it. I'm having a hard time doing that. I got a lot of issues, but I'm not bad at inspiring others to do it. And so I want you guys to stay focused, stay drug free, right? And I don't know what I'm going to do right now. I'm like, I really, this was the first video I made in a week because I've been on the street, you know, and it's rough. It's tough, man. So let's try and stop that recidivism rate, guys. I have nothing but love for you, and I will talk with you guys soon. I gotta go. All right. Bye bye.